I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, Kathy. Roll call, please.
You got it. Saban. Bartleson. Here. Deskin.
Here.
Bergbauer.
Here.
Galogly.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Pugh.
Present.
Sheehan is absent. We have a quorum.
All right. Police Chaplain Ernest Jones is in the house to open us up.
My Father, awesome God, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, first we say thank you. Thank you for all of your bountiful blessings. Thank you for your divine protection. Thank you for prospering us and leading us and guiding us. We ask you to lead us tonight, Father God. We give God honor and praise in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Ernest. All right, my friends, anybody got anything for liaison reports?
Just one thing real quick, don't forget, Restaurant Week is coming up. It starts Monday, the 26th, and goes through March 10th. We got Public Landing, Mama Onesta's, La Camule, Villanova, 933 Speakeasy, Embers, Taco Patio, The Vegan Cafe, Paradise Bay, Nick and Ivy, Spring Sweets, The Donut Shop, Cream of Coffee, Biteable Baked Goods, Rosati's, Nikki's Euros, and of course Dairy Queen. And thanks to the Lockport Chamber, the Heritage Corridor, and the City of Lockport for collaborating together to put this together. And when you go, make sure you mention Restaurant Week to get the special.
I always mention Renee Saban. That's when I get my big discount.
That's good.
Right on.
Mayor, if I could just announce too, just a reminder that the Lockport Township High School Freshman Center referendum, there's open houses at the school, still doing tours every Wednesday night. I think it was at 6:30. We're obviously busy tonight, but on the off nights, if you haven't gone through it, go through it. They lead a nice tour and give a lot of information. We intended a luncheon with the chamber today that went over a small presentation of all the kind of frequently asked questions and stuff, and it was very informative. So if you get a tour, go for it.
All right.
I have a minor thing. I just wanted to let people know that the City of Lockport received an apology from the BNSF last week. We've been trying to get a quiet zone down at 9th Street, and part of that is also a quiet zone at our private Chevron property. Well, down at 9th Street, it's working. Chevron, they're still honking their horns, and they said they dropped the ball, and they apologized for that. They were stuff that they needed to be doing and didn't get it done. They didn't say exactly what time, what time frame we're looking at it about completion, but I heard 3 weeks, maybe a month or so. But
30 days, I think they said.
okay, so I just wanted people to know that.
So it kind of went into effect, and then it kind of fell off. Because there was a couple nights, I'm like, my gosh, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, it was always the 9th that was supposed to be done, and then there was a lot of confusion about the private crossing, but we were being assured that it will get there. We'll let you know in 30 days.
All right, thanks, Jer. All right, anybody else? Okay. All right, let's jump on into it. CD1, Lance, talk to us about 923.
Consent agenda.
Oh my gosh, I have the wrong agenda in front of me. You know, my old habits, I haven't been able to break free of them, doing committee of the whole first. No, it's all right, it is better this way. All right, so, looking for a motion to have a consent agenda. All right, Renee and Pat, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve regular city council meeting minutes from February 7th, our committee of the whole meeting minutes from February 7th, text amendment to chapter 156 of the Lockport Code of Ordinances for accessory structures. There's a facade and site improvement grant for 921 South State. There's a fire alarm and sprinkler grant for 946 North State. We have our payroll period ending February 4th, bills through February 8th. The proposal from Chamlin for 28-7 for the HOA storm water management. There's task order from V3 for the New Avenue intersection improvements, Phase 2. And then appropriation and eligibility for the MFT funds for maintenance of streets and highways. So Looking for a motion to approve all that. All right, Joanne, and heard Jonathan. Okay. May I have a roll call, please?
You got it. Saban. Yes. Bartleson.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Hugh.
Yes.
Sheehan is absent. The motion passes.
All right. So nothing else on this agenda. Looking for a motion to adjourn from that.
So moved.
All right, Jonathan and Pat, all in favor? Aye. Okay. So now we'll start our committee of the whole. So let me know when you're ready, Kathy.
You got it. All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
Roll call.
What's the, yeah, you can do roll call.
Okay. Saban. Bartleson.
Yes.
Deskin.
Present.
President. Deskin.
Here.
Bergbauer.
Here.
Galogly.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Hugh.
Present.
And Sheehan is absent. We have a quorum.
All right, so we are going to do a request for executive session tonight. Which ones was for?
2C11 for litigation, pending litigation,
That would be after the.
after the end of the
Yep.
committee.
After the.
All right. All right, so that's coming. And then, all right, let's jump into 923 South State. What do you got, Lance?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is related to ordinance 24-005 and Resolution 24-022. The applicant, Dan Kleister, on behalf of Ford Development Investment Group, has submitted an application for a special use permit for a planned development and preliminary and final development plans in one step for a 30-unit multifamily development with a commercial storefront for the property located at 923 South State Street. Property is located in the Registered Historic District on State Street and received a COA by the Heritage and Architecture Commission in January 2024. Subject property is the vacant property where buildings 923 through 929 State Street were once located. The property is currently utilized for public parking. The prior building was a single-story building that housed multiple storefront units. Originally, the building was constructed in the 1950s for the first major grocery chain, A&P, in the downtown. Once they vacated, the building was divided up into multiple tenant spaces, and it later accommodated many users such as Lockport Bowling Alley, Currency Exchange, Furniture Store, Stevenson Photography, Weber Denim, and a weightlifting facility. In November 2010, a fire broke out in the building and was later demolished, and since 2010, the property had been vacant, and we developed it as a city into a parking lot that leaves a significant block, or significant gap in that block. Proposed building is a 3-story building with a lower level parking that you see on your screen that will be accessible to vehicles from Commerce Street. Just as a reminder, level 1 is even with State Street, and Commerce Street is one complete floor below that. So what you see on your screen is accessible from Commerce Street, but it would not be accessible from State Street because of that 1 foot or that 1 floor difference. The first floor is a combination of commercial retail space, which will be located in the front east portion of the building, and residential apartment units behind the storefronts. The second and third floors, which you see on your screen here, will be dedicated to residential apartment units with 11 units on each floor. The first floor will have approximately 1,800 square feet of commercial space and 8 apartments behind the commercial space. And the number of commercial tenants is unknown at this time, which is why you see the space fairly vacant. That will be ultimately filled, hopefully as a part of the construction process, assuming we can get tenants in there. And those would be built out with tenant funds that both the developer offers as well as the tenant themselves. So they would offer funds to be able to locate plumbing and bathrooms and things like that where they need to go over time based on that tenant's layout plans. Residential units will consist of a total of 27 one-bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units. Each of those, I believe, has 1 bath or 1.5 bath, depending on the model. What you see on your screen now is the elevation, the front elevation, the State Street elevation in the top left. And in the bottom right, you can see the Commerce Street elevation. You see I put a black line on there that denotes where the State Street level is of the street. So you have 3 stories above State Street and then 1 story below State Street. You can see the garage entrance on that bottom right elevation as well.
Property is located in the registered oh, that was the wrong section. Anyways, on the next slide, you have the north and south elevation. So the top one would be the north elevation directly adjacent to the old City Hall building currently used by the Boy Scouts. And the bottom elevation is the one next to 921. And you can see with the darker black line, the outline of where the 921 building is along that facade. There are what I'll term insets on both facades to kind of break up the overall horizontal mass of it. It also allows for light both now and in the future into the windows that would be placed along that frontage. So you can see that. And then this is a rendering of it at night. H&A found it to be very consistent with the general design guidelines, the standards that we tend to keep, and all of our documentation that they evaluate projects against. The materials are nearly entirely brick across the frontage. The cornice and the top coping is very similar to what you find where Lockport Vacuum is in Nick and Ivy's building. They both have a brick-formed cornice along it, and then the sills and the lintels above the windows are consistent in flavor with what we have. The awnings above the spaces over the doors are essentially set up to be, because it is a new building, it's not the traditional one, so it is more horizontal, similar to the way Lock and Mule did their building, as opposed to something that is of late 1800s vintage. But the scaling, the massing, the proportion is all very consistent with our downtown. One thing that had come up at the Plan Commission meeting that I want to make sure that I kind of talk through with everybody is the desire for additional commercial space, and whether or not that is possible both in the current plan, but also in the future as demand for space downtown grows. So one of the things that we worked with the developer on, that you see in the red circle there, is we flipped the layout of the apartment so that the wet wall, i.e. the wall that has plumbing and all the other types of things that are difficult to maneuver, would actually be flipped to the outside of the wall, so that ultimately that wall would be able to be removed and you could add another 700 square feet to the original frontage. So all total, you could have 2,500 square feet in order to expand that. In the long-term distant future, if the demand and the rent values all justified it, this having the double door along the State Street frontage would allow for a hallway to be created that would take you back to other office suites that could be converted out of the existing apartments that are there right now. So that, again, if there was demand and if the rents were able to justify the expense of doing that, that would be a possibility then, taking it from that step to the future. So with that, the item received, like I said before, a COA from H&A on January 16, 2024. The Plan and Zoning Commission made a recommendation for approval of the item with a vote of 5-1 with the following motions. A motion to adopt staff's findings of fact and recommend approval of a special use permit for a planned development to allow a 30-unit apartment community with a commercial storefront and lower level parking. And item B is a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary final development plans in one step. That's my report. And the applicant is in the audience tonight if you have any questions specific for him.
All right, Mike, anything? Okay. Yep, and thanks again for considering some of the options in the future. I always like flexibility, so that's great. Yep. Okay. All right, my friends, so if everybody's good, you guys want to put this, does it need to go to a action item?
It's up to the.
You guys are
city
okay with the
council.
consent on it? Yes. Okay, consent. Thank you much, appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, next, Sonny, what do you got?
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, AT1 is a dedication of portion of 1602 Madison Street for a right-of-way dedication. As you could tell by the next slide, this is the property in question, this triangular property in which part of South Street already goes through the property line of the 1602 property. For whatever reason, the road was used and paved, but the dedication did not occur. So this is a mere cleanup to make sure that the city can use that continue to use that for South Street. The owner has been compensated for the price of that right-of-way dedication, and the plat of dedication, let's see, if we could go back to the other side. Prior to, yep, that's the triangular portion on the plat of dedication. That would be the right-of-way area that would be dedicated to the city, and that will allow us to continue to utilize South Street. And for those reasons why the property owner is accepting or granting the right-of-way area as depicted on the plat of dedication. I would be more than happy to answer any questions, but we request this item to be set for consent at the next city council meeting.
Is this a current satellite image?
No, because that triangle's down.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to-
So basically what we're doing here is we're dedicating a right-of-way for, so a lot of that in that triangle is not even there anymore. It's now,
No, it's, yeah, so
Yeah.
the yellow is the property line of the 1602 Madison Street.
Yeah.
So that's the outline, the property outline,
all right, sounds good to me.
yeah.
All right, okay.
So the plat shows the portion that is being dedicated to the city for the use of right-of-way.
Okay, I understand. So, it was an unusual project, and usually people lose a little bit. These guys got a lot more grass to cut.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and we were actually maintaining that parkway, the northern part of that triangle, for years. So, and we've already paved through the property line for South Street, so it's basically a cleanup dedication.
Yep, okay, all right. Any questions then? We good? Put it on for consent?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Brent, what do you got? PW1.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Have the first item on the agenda this evening, PW-1, is in regards to our IDOT audit. There was an MFT appropriation from 2022 where we had lumped in all of our funds for that year under maintenance. So essentially what we do annually is anytime that we are doing any type of maintenance, crack filling, pavement marking, and our road salt, we have to allocate those funds to be used through a maintenance MFT resolution. What we did that year was we also did some resurfacing included with that. IDOT came back and they asked us to pull that resurfacing portion out because it was a substantial project. Typically resurfacing can be included, but this was a substantial project. They asked us to remove it. So we did that, but we have to additionally basically just file paperwork to reappropriate those funds. So what this resolution, this IDOT resolution would do is to reappropriate those funds. The funds have already been spent. It's just a matter of cleanup at this time to appease the IDOT audit. So we'd be asking for council to consider approving the IDOT form resolution number 24-019, appropriating $1,890,352.67 for improvements of streets and highways by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code. And we would be asking for council to consider consent at our next city council meeting.
All right, any questions, concerns? All right, we good with consent then? All righty. And we got for your last piece here.
All right, our last item is in regards to Old Canal Days. We have, as council's aware, over the last several years, we have held Old Canal Days down at the Chevron's property. Annually, what we do is we put a lot of maintenance into the site. We continue to try to improve it through ADA improvements, through stone compaction, making sure that we are doing everything we can to make this site as feasible as possible for the short term and also for the long term. And so what we're bringing to council to consider this evening is a full improvement of the site that would be used in the short term for Old Canal Days, but also in the long term, it could be used as a full improvement for a roadway, an extension of Davies north-south. Sonny, would you mind clicking the next?
I got it. My bad.
Thank you. So as you can see on the screen, here is the layout that is being proposed. The gray with the black outline, that is what we're suggesting would be pavement. So you can see the north-south extension of Davies where it's got the section AA. That is what is shown on the left. So if you look at the left portion of the picture, you can see what the typical section would be. All of that road is flowing to the west. So there is no typical crown on a typical roadway. There's a crown in the middle of the road. Half of the road would pitch to the east, half would pitch to the west. In order to continue to provide stormwater flow and not impact it at all, we are continuing that flow to the west, so the roadway would be pitched to the west. If you go to the kind of the northeast section of the site, there is the pedestrian entrance that we've added over time. So what we would have here we would have a paved surface that would allow pedestrians, people walking after the parade, people walking from across the street to continue on the sidewalk, continue into the site via pedestrian paved access and over to what would be an extension of Davies. Also, we've got ADA parking. That's the parking section just to the, I guess, the southwest of 2nd and Davies. That would provide ADA parking for the festival and for any future events that might take place there. This again is to provide the ADA access to a paved surface, and that paved surface would continue south through the site. And then there is also the proposed paving of 2nd Street. So 2nd Street from the existing gate west all the way to the limits of what is currently paved. Right now, it's about a 30-foot, give or take, section. We are proposing to widen that. So when you come through the gate, it would be a continuous flow, so you're pulling straight through. Right now, it's a little bit of an offset. We would be eliminating that. And then also at the far western edge, you can see that we are providing a turnaround that essentially a hammerhead that would allow for either the future tie-in of pavement or also provide for adequate turnaround and accessibility for vehicles. Again, the stormwater would continue to the west as it does today. Stormwater detention for the property has already been provided across the tracks, so to the west of the BNSF tracks, there is already stormwater detention. So this would not require any improvements beyond what is shown. There is no storm sewer being proposed. There is no curb being proposed. This roadway in the future would become, or could become, a fully improved section. The base that is being proposed is per the city code. The asphalt that is being proposed would again be per city code, so this could be used as a long-term improvement. What we were asking council to consider this evening would be a design build, which would allow us to take the site, which has already been surveyed by V3. They know quite a bit about the site from various environmental work on the property. So rather than doing a full design at this point, we are asking for council to consider a construction management project that would allow for the project to be fully improved through V3 and make significant improvements to the site. So council, this evening, we're asking for council to consider moving forward with the proposal not to exceed $490,245. And this would be for the 2024 Old Canal Days roadway construction. Again, this is for a construction management job. And we're asking for council to consider the approving resolution number 24-023, and be happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, questions, concerns? Anybody? We got anything, Jim?
If nobody wants to talk, I will talk. First of all, in previous council, we had a member who would just stay quiet the whole time, and then we'd go to vote on it, and we'd be yes, 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 and all of a sudden, they would go no, and you go, well, why the heck did they vote no? So I'm not for this plan or this project as it is, the scope of it right now. The things I do like, I have no problem with V3 as the design engineer or being the project manager on this. I have no problem this being a design-build project. I think our other previous design-build project was the Hamilton Street parking lot. So technically, a parking lot road job is a very good project to do as a design-build, so I have no issues with that. I just look at the big general idea of it and what are we trying to accomplish. And I believe, when I look at it, we're making Old Canal Days ADA friendly. We're not making it ADA compliant, because if it's compliant, we'd have to probably asphalt the whole thing. You still have the craft area where people are going to be in stone. You still have the food court, you have the concert venues. So there's still a lot of stone out there that I think, so what you're doing is you created handicap parking, which is wonderful. You created a nice spot for wheelchairs, strollers, everything else to enter in. But are you making the whole thing completely ADA compliant? No, you're not. So I think for $500,000, it's a lot of money just for that purpose. I don't see the purpose of extending Davies at this time, and I don't understand the purpose of extending 2nd Street all the way out to the edge of the property. So I feel like this project is mostly designed for Canal Days. Now, I have nothing wrong with Canal Days wanting to become more ADA friendly, and I think that could be done on a lower budget. I think we can come up with a way to increase pavement, give them a handicap parking lot, do a few things, but not at this amount of money. My other concern is there's a minority out there. I'm old school. I went to the probably first Canal Days, and I dream of it, once again, going back downtown. So when I look at this money that we're committing here, I'm also looking at the commitment to Old Canal Days as being out here for years and years to come. And for those who vote in favor of this project, I would hope you would also get that commitment from Ben or whoever saying, Chamber, if we're going to put this money into this project, we're staying out here, because it really wouldn't benefit us to do all this work, and then all of a sudden, our council changes, there's a rollover or turnover of people, and they go, hey, why don't we come back down in town again? So I would at least say, if it does get approved, you have some type of agreement, just keep it out there. But I'm one of the old school, and I believe eventually Old Canal Days should get downtown. I know it's tough because we don't have the carnival facilities that are really required to make this a successful Old Canal Days. I just read that Plainfield has stopped their fest, and it's basically because they have no room for their carnival. They tried to move it out to the high school, and it didn't work, and they don't make enough money on their own. So I know the importance of it, but could we make it work somewhere downtown in the future? I don't know. And my final thing is, if it gets approved, I would also want you to have an agreement. I talked to Brent, I talked to Ben. One of the major problems with this property is not Canal Days. The major concern with this property is Hell's Gate and the amount of damage they do to this property in their month that we allow them to park there. So if we would move forward with this, I would think we should also have some type of writing or a contract with Hell's Gate saying either a financial commitment to continue to use the property, or damage liability of support, how much money we have to spend to go back and fix it. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not going to vote for this. I don't know if I'm going to be at the next meeting, hopefully get out of a work conflict. But I don't like that we're spending so much money. And the few people I've talked to, and I know we're the minority, but I talked to at least 5 people who said, why are we spending almost $500,000 for an Old Canal Days redesign, or like I said, making it ADA accessible. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
I have a question about the, I agree with some of what JR said. The southern part of Davies, it's like cross hatching in that's not going to be, that's not in the, That's not going to be paved initially, is it?
Yes.
It is?
Yep. Yeah, so to continue that through down to Davies, the intention would be that it does provide access, when we've talked during our old Canal Days meetings, it does provide access for emergency vehicles. And then it would also, in the event that Hell's Gate were to continue, there would be an access down there that would eliminate the need to come in off of Canal and again, to impact the site.
I understand that, but
So this design really came out of the Old Canal Days Committee. There's quite a few members of the community that participated in this. Some of the staff participated with it. I know Lance and Brent went to a lot of the meetings. I went to a couple of them. You know, at the end of the day, we did talk to the chamber about, hey, this is we felt this was a good idea. It was a good improvement for ADA friendly. JR is correct. I would not call it ADA compliant because we'd have to put ramps everywhere and everything. But the number one complaint we got, the only complaint I believe I got with the new location, other than JR not wanting it there, was that people couldn't push their strollers throughout the site. They couldn't get their strollers to the carnival. So the reason you'll see this alignment down to Davies is so that the carnival is further down there too. So certainly it'll be used by the pedestrian access for the people that come over. The little finger of the new walkway is a direct connection to when the parade ends and there's a sea of humanity that comes over the bridge and wants to come into the entrance. There's a new entrance at that corner intersection that makes a lot of sense for the flow of people. The ADA parking lot, we've always had an ADA parking lot. It's just not been paved, and so I think a paved improvement for ADA friendliness is going to be a welcome thing. One of the reasons the cost went up more than what we originally projected was the improvement at 2nd Street. When you see the top part down to the hammer, many of you, I'm sure, or almost all of you have attended Old Canal Days. It gets pretty messy with stone and all the traffic and people coming up other fields, and the debate that I witnessed was that it'd be nice to have, 2nd Street has been improved up to the bridge, it would be nice to at least continue it through the site, and it's just a nice improvement. You could save money by reducing the asphalt from that part. You could save money by doing a less thick road, but those seem like more temporary. I think this is a bit more of a commitment to Old Canal Days at this site. I think the overwhelming majority of the community thinks it's a good success. I believe the chamber, who we partnered with long-term to host the event at this site, has no plans to relocate it. I did talk to their staff member about having a long-term agreement. We could develop one, but if you recall, when we did an agreement with them to actually run the event, we said we would be giving them $90,000 a year, and that decision would be made annually at budget time. So they said, yeah, we'd be willing to commit for 10 years if you want to commit to 10 years of funding. So I think the current model works. It's not perfect, but I think it's fine. Other events, flea markets, other opportunities for tourism can be here. It's more than just Old Canal Days. And I think the future alignment with the Stantec plan shows a potential access to the west side. So if you're there out there with the equipment and getting it put in, I think it's a good idea to complete it down to the gate. There's a gate there, so through traffic will not be going through there to Davies. The haunted house will not go through there for Davies. We do have, you mentioned the haunted house, we do have plans to meet with the owners. They have a lease with us that they need to renew. It's expired. There's concerns from the fire district that they'll need to address for sprinklers. They need to address some type of use agreement for this lot. Brent has worked with the owners for some stone damage each year. How that gets ratified into a larger agreement, we'll be bringing to you in the future. I think the asphalt improvement will help alleviate a lot of those concerns. We did include some additional not to exceed costs to help us with some of the stone improvements. I think everyone would like a giant parking lot, but that's even more expense, and it also triggers stormwater and other things that we don't want to enhance. You know, the IAPA says that we can make this improvement, we just can't change the overall grading and topo to the site, and so we're staying true to our limitations on what we can necessarily build there today. I think it's a great compromise. I know
I agree with everything you said, but that's not what concerns me. So if we go from looking at this, where I'm going to say the U-shaped arrows, smack, almost midway of that road, I don't have any idea why we would even consider paving that at that time at $500,000, you know.
I'm sorry, tell me what you're,
That portion.
you want to
that-
stop just south of AA?
Yeah,
or-
because I was at that meeting with, Canal Days, and they, the original proposal there was a cul-de-sac, and I hate cul-de-sacs. And so you look at this area here, they say, well, that's about where the end of the carnival is, okay?
Correct.
So if we have the gate open down there at Davies, and it's in the condition it is now, we still have access to all the emergency vehicles and on and on and on and on and on. I just can't see, if Davies is not going to become a through street, then I don't know why we would go ahead and want to spend any money on asphalt beyond the AA arrows.
Well, the carnival goes south of the
Yeah,
AA
the
arrows
cul-de-sac, the
Yeah.
cul-de-sac's probably another 75 feet south of that. That portion of asphalt is $25,000, $30,000. So if we're really looking to substantially change this $500,000 project, we would have to look at something else, because that portion is not a cost. That impacts the overall.
Yeah, if you
improvement.
stop from the yellow where that last arrow is to the south, where the last yellow box is just south of the AA, I don't know what you put there. You didn't want a cul-de-sac. Well, you can't have a road just end. You're going to have to put a cul-de-sac in. The cost for the cul-de-sac would be a net gain compared to just taking the asphalt to the fence at Davies.
Is it, the road, the way it's laid out, you mentioned earlier Stantec, it's consistent with the Stantec master plan?
It's not exactly the same layout because the design for the festival space accommodates today's real festival space, and so as a schematic design or a conceptual design that was in the plan, that would need to be modified as a part of this overall structure. But yes, the plan did have a connection from Second Street down to Davies for future access or more through street needs or more other things, because there were other components of the master plan that identified Davies Street being connected to 9th Street and ultimately the full circulation, because that is the only way to get two-way traffic from 2nd Street down to 9th Street. That was possible.
So a connected street is in the master plan, just this has got a bow in it, or it's a little
Yes.
different, in other words? Okay. All right. I mean, my take on it is, we've been doing things incrementally, a little at a time, as we have money for it. I think part of the reason to connect the road was that ultimately it does take steps towards the fulfillment of that master plan. I mean, the way it looks in the master plan is eventually the road along the canal is just removed, and
No,
that way you have, the canal and the park and festival goes right up to the canal. You're not separated by a fence and a road, and that's fine. I think it's the right idea, but these are incremental steps. I don't have a problem taking incremental steps. I remember when we redid the Second Street Bridge, and we got a lot of grief for that, right? Why are they making such a nice bridge to nowhere? They're all idiots. But it's like, because we had a plan, right? The plan was to incrementally build things up until we, slowly but surely get to a place where this was a viable place and district. And, I mean, I don't have an issue with it. I hear my fellow aldermen's thoughts about, like, why they would think it might be that way, or maybe even Second Street West to where the Hammerhead is or something, but running it through the site, I think it will be nice
Well,
for Old
I
Canal
just
Days.
think, if we're gonna pave it all the way down to Davies, then let's just make it a through street then. Let's just go all the way.
So it'll be usable as a through street, the way it's built, but only if we open up the gates,
Only if we
right?
open up the gate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the master plan, Canal Street basically becomes a two-way bike path. That would be an extension on the west side of the canal of the I&M Canal Trail, so that as people want to do loops, which is the typical way that a lot of people either walk or would ride their bike, they would be able to ride on both the east and the west side. Now, obviously, that requires an extension that would go then further to the south, which could connect to the path that would be going over the 9th Street Bridge if that comes to fruition. But that was the original intent, so that we would be able to save the dollars of removing or replacing or putting a new bike path in. We would basically be converting Canal Street into a two-way bike path along that section, and then basically Davies Extended would become the through street, because it did allow for two-way traffic, and there isn't anymore the awkward, I have to turn right when I'm going south to go up to Davies, to then turn left again, to then turn right to get over to 9th Street. It just allowed for a little bit better through back and forth flow.
Any other observations, thoughts?
Yeah, JR makes a good point. I didn't even think of that when I was looking at this, but where you've got the A and the B, if you don't extend B and you don't extend A, and you take that asphalt piece and you kind of lay out paths through the craft area there, does that buy anything?
No, well, it creates more problems with stormwater. We didn't want, that was actually part of an original design that had many kind of paths broken in, but you end up trapping water, and we don't want to be engaging stormwater, so we've looked at this in a way that we can keep the water sheet flowing off of the existing asphalt that goes where the water is supposed to go, as designed by Troy Hydro and Chevron, gets down to the bedrock, runs the corner, goes to the next culvert. If you start creating too many little fingers in here, you start trapping water, which is really problematic.
At the feet of the vendors.
Yeah, at the feet of the vendors and patrons. So that was, I'm no engineer, but that's about what Brent told me.
Is there like an impermeable layer underneath all this rock that doesn't allow
Stone.
water to go through?
It's bedrock about this far down.
There is an impermeable area, and it's the bedrock that, a lot of this site, the bedrock is inches below, and so that's one of the I think the challenges on this whole site is the stormwater has nowhere to go. The stormwater can only go down so far, gets to the bedrock, goes to the west, gets in the ditch, they call it the Santa Fe ditch, works north up to the lift station that we have, some massive pumps with generators now, and then it pumps underneath the BNSF railroad to the detention pond. So there's just, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, there's really no impacts you can do to this site that would make it any worse than it is today, because it's all on bedrock.
And then,
Well, I just think that if we're going to do this, then can we address this again in another year to go ahead? If this is going to be a through street, and if we're going to go ahead and look at the downtown master plan, and it's going to have to be done sometime, and I think we should probably think, we'll come back to it, say, in a year. And
well, I don't think it's being built in any way. I'm sorry to disagree with my friend and alderman. This was in the budget. This was part of the plan. Everyone's supported this in the community in Old Canal days. We wouldn't make it any different today than we would next year. I don't quite understand.
no. I'm
You're
talking
saying,
classification
to
of
open it
the
up.
road.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of engagement with the West Side residents.
Oh, yeah, well, that's going to be a war.
Yeah. Well, we could put a
actually,
cul-de-sac.
I kind of like the bow in it, because I think it helps. I think the original plan was straight, and yes, I could see that being problematic. I do like the bow. I think it does help keep that kind of racing through there. But
But that, I mean, people that are like coming down Second and onto that area, they turn onto Davies, right? I mean, like
Yes.
as soon as they get around, like that's where the one-way ends.
yeah,
And they turn
either they're
to
going
Davies
right
anyway.
along the canal.
No, actually Clinton. They come down, they get onto Clinton Road. You can't, that doesn't.
I just want to remind everybody too, the gates at this site must stay closed 100% of the time, with the exception of when we are doing some sort of an event. So the EPA would not even allow us
So
at
until,
this
until
point
it's,
to make this a.
until it's
the
fully
recreation
redeveloped, until it's really developed, it's just,
Yeah.
Right, so Second
could be
Street
decades.
that we're improving is all within the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And then this section that we're talking about, I guess, calling it a Davies extension, is all within a gate. So all of this would not be open to the public, again, 360, days
right,
of the
it's,
year.
it's,
So I just want to.
basically, it's helpful for Oka nowadays with accessibility, and it sets up an incremental growth as we move towards fulfillment of our downtown, or of this site's master plan. Is that kind of an accurate?
Yes.
And going back to what you said, Mayor, when the site is more fully developed, we can open the gate?
Yes, that's the whole point of it, is creating
It requires the
Permit
IEPA
change.
to change their permit to allow for a different use.
Because currently, this is only supposed to be for temporary use.
Right.
Not permanent.
And that's what I'm saying, is the IEPA would need to change the environmental land use controls
Yeah.
in an effort to allow us to more permanently use this for festivals, for events, to start to be able to sell property to whoever is going to join us from the master plan process.
Won't that require like a lot more paving?
Not in particular, no. It'll be different, it'll be designed, it'll be more formalized than what it is now, but the street was originally or is in the master plan that was approved by the council. The future goal, when you look at the plan, you'll see parcels along the canal being sold or leased for other types of businesses. And all of that, what was termed the Heritage Commons section of the master plan that would remain under city ownership, would require that IEPA change in their environmental land use controls. We have had initial conversations with Chevron and plan to approach the IEPA with those ideas. Initially, Chevron could be supportive of those land use changes because of the former use of what this portion of the site was. It was basically the office building and the parking for all the workers. So it wasn't like there was active refining going on, or tanks or storage or any of that kind of stuff related to this portion of the property specifically. So that's why we're hopeful, and that's why always in the plan section, that's why this was the most pedestrian portion of the plan, is because that was the goal, is to modify that.
Let me ask you something, because I'm feeling like maybe either I'm misunderstanding, or it's not that this has to be fenced off because you couldn't do buildings in there or do something else. It's fenced off simply for recreational standards. You can build in there. I mean, that's not the problem. I think, so it's not like this site is off limits for any development. It could be opened up. It's just simply a matter of, we keep it fenced off in the recreational side of it. But if we start developing it, you don't need IEPA approval for that. It's already okay for that. It can be a business park tomorrow if it wanted to be.
Is it the ELUX for commercial industrial, right? Like
Yeah,
that's the
it's-
restriction?
There's a variety of different uses that are in the environmental land use control, but to your point, the way that we have crafted that in the plan, there aren't a lot of those businesses that would want to be behind a fence with barbed wire, not connected to the canal. So the original intent was on the west side of the canal to be able to have something, whether it's, the make-believe distillery or the brewery that would be right on the canal, that could have outdoor seating on, structures and things like that, assuming that the IEPA, we could get over the hump on changing the environmental land use controls for this section of the overall property. So the hope is that ultimately the fence would come down or would be modified in some fashion, that it would become more commercial or more, let's say, aesthetically pleasing than what we have now. But as it stands now, it does need to remain the fence as it's currently located. And to Sonny's point, the use is a temporary use that the IEPA has allowed for the Canal Days event specifically.
Right, but it's not
Yeah.
off limits for
Yeah.
development in
No.
the sense
Correct.
that, and I think part of the idea was, is always to remain this festival field. Jared's concerned about it like being not used for that if we're going to do this. It's just that if buildings, according the way our Stantec plan was, it kind of would incorporate some of these buildings to complement. It would complement it.
Yes.
It would actually work.
It's a more public-facing portion of the master plan, whereas everything north of there could remain behind a fence because it would be intended to be a private corporation. And they don't want the general public just kind of meandering up into their operations. They want to have that distinction. And so this was, in the future, ultimate accomplishment of the master plan would be more public in nature than the north half of the site.
I do want to point out, Mayor, you do have a point regarding the ELOC, the land use restriction. It doesn't require the area to be fenced. I believe we fence it just to, I guess prevent people from trespassing. But the IEPA restriction doesn't require the road to be fenced in itself.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I think, to Darren's point, if we did want to look at it,
Yeah,
we could.
We don't have to do it now.
It's not a matter of saying that, like, hey, it's open playground. It still has, like, stay off the grass.
So,
That's a rock.
Without development,
Gravel.
it's not.
to kind of answer Jonathan's question, basically, everything south of Second Street is less restricted than the highly restricted land north of Second Street. And, so,
And the reason we're
That's
working
true.
with the IEPA to get it changed, Jonathan, it's kind of maddening, because like as Ben mentioned, on this picture, this is where their office building was, this is where their parking lot was, this isn't where they were making an oil.
Yeah, but if it wasn't impacted, there wouldn't be an ELUC on it.
You have to remember,
It's all restricted. That's how the IEPA looks at it. So now,
Like, is it,
but we
is that
have,
the case? Like,
we
they
have
did
specific.
sampling there and they found nothing? I don't believe it.
that doesn't
Don't let your
matter.
kids eat the dirt.
there
right.
are 800 stacks of paper that you can read through and believe it.
Yeah.
It's got no further action.
Yeah, they do have no further action on the soils as well as the surface water components of it. The
But there isn't
groundwater,
soil on the site.
That's because
All
they.
that got moved north.
Yes, they took it down to bedrock,
Brought in
moved
clean
it to the
soil.
Gamoos, and put new soil down.
yeah,
So,
there's new soil.
yeah, it was,
We got,
did a lot of work. I'll give them that, man.
so just to kind of summarize here a little bit, we have a special permit from the IPA for recreational use on the south portion, the 13 acres south of Second Street, for limited events and engagements. The overall site is not open for recreational at this time without special permission. If it gets developed as all industrial, of course, those activities will be allowed and the road could be open. But we keep it fenced in because we're trying to, A, preclude just general wanderers, but B, we told the IPA we would keep it locked as long as we didn't have the e-look changed yet. So that process and conversation is ongoing with Chevron and IPA.
It's difficult is because in order to make it, give it a recreational standard, that is like a housing standard. And the IPA is like, you can't build houses there. We have no intention of building houses. Yeah, but if we allow this, then you can build houses. But we're not going to build houses. Yeah, but we can't do that because you'll build houses. It's like, oh, yeah. So this is the kind of stuff you have to deal with, right? So it's like, how do we, and Chevron, are able to convince a bureaucrat at a desk in Springfield that we're not trying to do this to build houses? There's no intention of building houses, but
So the only, I'm good with it now. The only restriction I would have or recommendation is, I just don't want any tent poles pounded into the asphalt.
tell them, pound them in the dirt still. Yeah.
Or the carnival rides anchored.
Yeah, I don't want,
Yeah.
I don't want any anchors in our $500,000 road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you create a hole, you got a hole, then it fills up with water, then it freezes, it pops. That would be the only restriction okay.
Yeah, we
I'm good
agree.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
and,
eventually you can build buildings and be fairgrounds.
right. So, you know,
I've got one more question. How do you protect the edge of that road?
Yes,
when
good
it sits
question.
up against that soft gravel?
You let it deteriorate, and I'll be honest with you, we're overbuilding this by 2 feet on either side with a long-term intention that will happen, that the outer,
Because cars, I mean, because we're putting this in and we're encouraging traffic to go off of that road.
correct.
Just
And we, so,
Back onto it.
so we were overbuilding it with the intention that when we actually put our curb in, we can come back, we can cut 2 feet on either side and put our curb in, and then we have, the perfect road again. But that's what we're doing. So it's going to be sacrificial, essentially.
But we can't put a curb in because we don't want to do the wastewater, or the stormwater.
No stormwater, and now we are talking about, this is semi-permanent. I mean, you put curb in, you start to do those types of things, it becomes much more permanent. But yeah, for right now, the addition of curb on this, besides increasing cost, would have no benefit.
All right. Well, when we put it down for action, if there's any further questions, of course, run it by staff or,
And I just want to thank Ben and Brent for their patience with me, because I think I asked them over 25 questions on this project, and they got me answers and got V3 and everybody involved, so I appreciate it, guys.
Yes,
The
John.
Resolution 24023 was to authorize not to exceed $490,000. The extra 20 was for some additional stonework that Brent and I had talked about, we would like to get achieved done at the same time. So I just wanted to point that out, that the task order and the memo are just off by a little bit, but that was on purpose. And so, yes, we'll have it on as an action item at the next meeting.
Jonathan, what's up?
Last question I've got isn't related to this, but more related to Canal Days and like that dusty gravel, which is probably CA6. Is that what it is put down?
Mix of CA6, and then we also throw some screenings on top, which is even more of a dusty material. The great thing about the screenings, though, is they become perfectly smooth, and they're 25% of the cost of CA6, so they go a little bit farther, but we try to use both. But anyway, yes.
So is it the belief that if we continue to kind of maintain that gravel area, that it would be less dusty?
Yeah.
I mean, I would guess that was a complaint that came up.
And there's also
getting home
additional
at night.
chemical that's put down in the crafters area that Okinawa Days will be covering the costs for, to help mitigate the dust in other areas that aren't improved. So there will still be some of that additional, I forget what the chemical's called, but in certain areas.
And that's like what we're doing now is best practice for kind of
Correct.
that.
And it's essentially a tree sap is what it's very similar to. And the more applications, so year after year after year, it becomes more and more
Fines up.
beneficial. And so, I think, again, as we expand that area, now that's only done in this portion of the site, so that portion of the site will continue to get better and better and better. But
Do you think it'll ever get to the point where somebody can take a stroller out onto it without struggling?
I think we were very close in that portion last year. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on that north portion, and I do think we were very close.
What does that cost, ballpark, to kind of maintain that?
Last year was about $6,000.
Yeah,
I wanna
6 to
say.
10, depending on how wide they go.
Peanuts compared to this.
And it seems to last months when they put it down before it starts, and it erodes slowly over time. So the other point of clarification I want to make in the memo is that some of the funding, we're anticipating using some grant funds for this. We've been talking to the administrator. It all qualifies, but I always like to say there's no guarantee until we get that money. But I did talk to Lisa. She couldn't be here tonight. We don't need to use any of those radio funds, Mayor. We should have fund balance and/or reserves available to cover anything that if the grant doesn't go through, but we're pretty confident we'll get it, so.
All right, friends, thanks for good discussion, and we'll put it on for action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else, new business? All right, then looking for a motion to adjourn.
If I could.
One question.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
so the city council has two options. You
Yes.
could either make a motion to go into executive session or make a motion to adjourn the meeting to go into executive session so you do not have to come back.
Just trying to be
You guys all have to wait if we,
I didn't make a mistake. Yeah.
I make a motion to.
Well, let me ask Brent one question, okay? I see they're starting to do some, a little bit more action on 9th Street. So when will we expect them to start?
9th Street, we have not received any contracts from IDOT, and we have not had a pre-con yet, so the absolute earliest that we would see anything done out there would be late April, but I would tell you probably May 15th is about the time that I would realistically estimate the beginning.
Okay. So what, so,
We're gonna get some of that freed up 143rd Street money. Okay. All right, so you wanted to make a motion to adjourn?
To
city
adjourn,
council and-
to move into an executive session.
Yes, and that would be under 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act, litigation when an action against or on behalf of a public body has been filed and is pending before the court, or when a public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which the case and the basis of that finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. So that would be the motion.
Yeah, Kathy, add that to my motion.
Okay.
What'd she say? All right, got a second for that? All right, we have to repeat it all. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, we'll head over to exec.
Yeah, last 10 days.